Hi, everyone. Welcome to Live with Janome. I'm going to put the camera on in just a moment. All right, let's see here. I'll go ahead and get our camera on. Oops, not that one. There we go. Got to click the right button sometime. All right, I think we're ready. So welcome to Janome Live. I'm Ann Hine, Embroidery Software Specialist for Janome America. And today I'm going to be talking about applique know-how and a little bit about hoop knowledge. A couple people has some questions about hoops and hoop limits and things like that. So I wanted to cover that a little bit today, just add it into this lesson. And if you haven't done applique before, I'm going to talk about creating applique in our software, but you may have purchased applique, and purchased appliques work the same way as creating them. So it's always good to watch your purchased appliques stitch out. That helps you build your skills when you create your appliques in our software. Now, our software does have an applique tab, so it makes things easier. There are times when you want to use that, and maybe there's times when you want to use a manual way where you create your first outline and continue to go from there. Hi, Marty. Welcome. Looks like a nice day out there. So hopefully, I know we have some weather coming, but today looks good. All right, I'm going to put the camera on. I have some samples to show you about applique and also some things that from applique can lead into, like patches and bookmarks and things like that in the hoop things. All right, let me go get that. And let's see, we need to be down here. Let's see. There we go. All right, there we go. Straighten that up a little bit. So this one here, this is one of my older samples. And if you haven't done applique before, typically when you load an applique, it creates, the first stitch is the placement. So you'd have that and you would lay your fabric over that and it would stitch it down, and then you could trim your extra fabric away. And then these two samples, this one here shows sort of a raw edge look with a buttonhole stitch. And then this one has the satin stitch. And I'm going to hold those up a little closer so you can see. Now this has been, dragged around a little bit. So let me get it in the right spot. There we go. So you can see those two. And that is a little ragged because that is a raw edge. And if you're going to do raw edge, I always suggest use something like Terrio Magic on your fabric or starch, best press, things like that, that'll help hold those fibers from shredding too much on there. Hi, Anne, welcome. So here's another one. This is a layered piece. And sometimes when you're working, and this is an old one, you've all saw him a long time. This is Spool Guy. But sometimes working with applique where you have layers of applique and even embroidery, you have to work maybe a little bit harder to get that to work so that you don't have extra stitches jumping over and so forth. But it's easy. It's not that hard to do. You just have to think a little bit about it. And this might be a case where the back part here is the applique tab, and this part I did manually. And then when I add embroidery on top of there, you always want to turn off remove overlaps. And you want to put that to never remove overlaps for all your parts on there. Here's another quick one as well. There we go. And this is a little, I think it's wrinkling because I haven't been carrying it around. It is on a piece of, two pieces of fabric. So sometimes the top is going to shift and give you a little wrinkle. So because this is a ready-made placemat, it's not really held together. So after you start making, appliques, you're going to be thinking like, well, I can make dimensional things like this. This is basically an applique. You can see the satin stitches, and it has a back. And then I added, before I put the back on, I added the little ribbon. And of course I made one here, the little one. So you could put this in your book and flip that to the outside like that. If you're into reading, there, let me put that over there. And then this is a badge, and I want to show you something. I have another one here, but I want to show you this one here. I think I have almost enough of this. So just like in applique, when you start doing a badge or a patch, and you can't see the placement line, but there's a placement line under there. And I laid my vinyl and it stitched my vinyl down, and then it did my embroidery. Okay. And then when I got done, I wanted to make sure before I did my satin stitch that I add the back piece. So there would be another run line here. So I put my back piece on and it would do the run line. And then I could trim away my vinyl and I could trim away the felt and do the final stitch, which is the satin stitch. This is Badge Master, and I definitely suggest using it. You could use a couple layers of Solvay or some of the other wash away stabilizers because that's what you want to use. But this is much firmer and really, look at how much satin stitch is in there, and that hasn't torn away. And I carry this around places. So that, from your applique, you can make a patch or a badge, whatever you want to call it. This one came from, and I showed this one a little bit ago. This one is a design in our CM17. I just added the outline to it and then made it a satin stitch. And this is one I could do manually or with the applique feature on there. And then you just add, your piece as you go. Let me see. This is another one. Here we go. That I started. See, this one I didn't put a back on it. Well, I guess I did put a back, but it's not very fancy. And this is just an embroidery in our software. I went in and added some things to make it more like this. Now you can do applique. Now this one here, and I'll show you how you can create this. I created a cut file, so I didn't have to do any trimming. So I put a placement line. I put my cut piece in here with glue, ironed it on or whatever glue I was using at the time. And then it did the finishing with the decorative stitch. And then if you can look on I'll show the back. Let's see what the back, back looks good. Hang on a second. I still have my stabilizer in there. I haven't washed that out. There we go. Just because it's a sample and I want to keep it nice and stiff. Here's a little one that is a small heart. And you can use decorative stitches even if you're using the applique tab in the software. Hi, Julie. Welcome. All right. So let me turn on, we'll get back to hoops in a moment, but I want to turn on the software and show you how to create an applique. Here we go. All right. Let me get this little guy out of the way. There we go. All right. So what I'm going to do is I want to bring in two different types of graphics. And I went out onto the World Wide Web and I downloaded some free vector art. And this one here, this is an SVG. And SVGs will, when you click on them, they immediately create stitches and land on the, land on your work page. So they're much easier to work with. This is a PNG. And it is a vector clip art, but it still has a little work to do. Hi, Kelly. Oh, I was just down in New Mexico in Cozumel a week or two ago. We had a lovely time. All right, so let's go here. I'm going to do the SVG first. And there it lands in here. And you'll notice over in the far corner, you'll see the used colors over here. So there's a black and a white in this, and I'm going to zoom in so we can see it a little bit closer. There we go. And when you select both of these, you can delete one of those if you want. And now I've deleted the black part, and I'm just going to undo it and bring it back. I could also just select the white part. Let me see if I can select just the white part. Select that color, and if I can, it's not going to let me select it because they are kind of welded together. But I don't need the black part because you could use the black part as well. You can make an applique whether you have an outline or a fill item. Oh, I'm sorry, New Mexico, not Mexico. Sorry. Do I know my geography? Yes, I do. Oh, Kelly, I can't wait to see you in Alto. That'd be great. I'm doing a CM17 retreat there at a quilting situation. All right, so let me go back. First of all, I went to Mexico, to Cozumel. not to New Mexico, but that's okay. All right, so as I was saying, you can make an applique with using just an outline art if you have it, or a filled piece. So let's go ahead and I'll delete the inside. And now you can see there's my outline stitch right there. And when I move it off, because this is an SVG, there's no background behind it. You know, when you bring in a graphic, sometimes you have that background in there. And I'm going to put this back in the center. So all I need to do is have it selected. I can go over here to fill, select your fill, and there's applique right there. And I can click applique, and I'm going to change the color. It always takes the color of whatever your outline or your fill is. So I'm going to make the inside this green, and then I'm going to find this color for the, if we can, maybe I'll do this color. I'm trying to get that so you can see the outer color. So when I zoom in, you can see there's my outer color and there's my the inside part of the applique. So when you do an applique, it does put a fabric in there for you, so you can see that you would be using a fabric. And I'm going to go back to my properties, select my item, and now that I selected applique, I have these options here. So the fabric trim, I have an option here where I can trim it after embroidery, during embroidery, which means after it tacks down, or I can use a pre-cut right in here. And when you use a pre-cut, it does things a little differently. That means that you made a cut file and you cut your fabric on your digital cutter and brought it over. And I'm going to show you how you can create that right here at your applique. You don't have to go and make something else from here. You can do it right from the applique tab. So once you choose what you're going to do, and I'm going to do the typical, most of us will do an applique where we do the outline and then we lay the fabric over it, and then it stitches that down, and then it does, we trim it, and then it does the final stitch. Down here are your options for final stitch. So let's get in close so we can see. So typically a lot of us like satin stitch. So you can choose satin stitch, and maybe you want E-stitch, which is the blanket stitch right there. And then maybe you just want a zigzag like that. Now, if you are using zigzag, you could go to outline, and then, oh, there we go. You can go to your applique stitch, and then you can go in here and pick a decorative stitch for your applique if you wanted to. Isn't that cool? So how would this stitch, let me do slow redraw to show you. This one is going to, it's going to stitch the shamrock, and then at the top, it does that little jump right here. This is called the frame out. So when you do the frame out, when it does the frame out, if you have a smaller hoop here and your foot cannot go out far enough, the software will tell you that something with the frame out distance. So you'd have to move your applique somewhere else in the hoop so that you don't have that issue. So it did the placement, and now I laid my fabric down, and now it's going to do the tack down. And I'm just going to move it ahead a little bit. It's going to come around. And when it gets up to the top, it's going to do a little jump or stop because it's a color change. And then now that if you see at the bottom, it's in the turquoise, it's going to first do that decorative stitch all the way around like that to the end. There you go. So that all your steps are there, your placement, your tack down, and then your decorative stitch. Easy, easy, easy to do. Now, we're going to go stay with this one. Now, let's say I have a digital cutter and I want to cut the shape out with my digital cutter. So I have to turn on right up here, techniques. And I'm going to touch techniques up there. And I'm going to turn on my cut file. Don't worry, embroidery's on. It just turns red when it's like that. So I'm going to turn on the cut and I'm going to select OK. And now over here in my properties, I have some more features over here. Wait a minute, let me go to the right one. There we go. I have the cutter presets now under fill. Okay, so I can figure out what blade color I want. I can click here, figure out what fabric, what type of thing I'm cutting. I have those changes I can make right here in the software. And so in this one, any of the types that you do, you can do a cut file. All right. So I'm going to actually turn off my techniques for a minute. And let's say, let's do satin, and I'm going to change my my choice to pre-cut and glue. So I chose pre-cut and glue, but it doesn't bring up the cutting. So again, you would need, I could have left it on, but I wanted to show you, you're going to need to turn on anytime you want to have your cut file with your embroidery, you need to turn on that. And then with pre-cut and glue, it does a little bit different thing when you do slow redraw. Let me show you that. What it's going to do is just a placement, and it's going to do a jump out, I think, or a stop. Okay, so it jumped out. I saw it jump out, but didn't leave a little line. And now it at this point, what you would do, it's like it is a color change. You would lay your glue, your fabric with either your like a fusible glue that you're going to use, and you would take your hoop off your machine. Don't take it out of your hoop, and lay it on your ironing board, and you can iron your fabric in, or you can use a little bit of a maybe a spray glue. Maybe you do a little bit of Elmer's glue on there, and you could let that set for a minute or two. Hi, Patsy. And then it's going to start that decorative, whatever we have on the outside. So I did satin. And so this satin, this is the underlay. Now, some of you are going, oh, I don't want that underlay. So I went back to change your underlay. That is under the outline. So you would go to outline. You could come down here to underlay. And maybe you want to use maybe one like a double here, a double line or a single line, whatever you prefer. Let's do the double. And I'm going to go back to my slow redraw so you can see that we are still in applique. And it's going to do this. Get all that done. You're going to glue your shamrock down, and then it's going to start this. And I did a double run, so you can see the double run, and then it's going to start my satin. So you have control over all those items, even though you're in the applique tab. Even though you've chosen one of these here, the fix zigzag, fix e-stitch, or fix satin, you can make changes to that by going to your outline. I can change the width of my satin. I can do handmade corners if I want. I can offset if I need to, density and compensation, all of that. I do still have all those settings. Now, I did say that you can send this to your cutter. So I'm going to go up here to File, Export to Cutter. Now I'm not connected, so it's going to give me a little, this is my cutter there. It's going to let me show you the window, but I don't have anything to connect to. So there's my cut file. Now, if you don't have, I have the artistic edge. If you don't have the edge, you might have, maybe you have a scan and cut. They have a Brother FCM. You would save it as an FCM, or maybe your cutter takes an SVG. You could save as an SVG. And then I'm not sure what these other two ones are for, but I do know the SVG and I do know the Brother one. So you would just click on this, export it, and then you can export cut files. You're going to put it on a USB stick and save it. Okay. So all those options in just one piece. Now, if I wanted to add something on top of my piece, and I'm just going to come over here and I'm just going, I'm going to just go here and maybe draw a little thing like this to there. It's not the best, but there you go. Now I drew this on top of the fabric, and look what's going on. And I'm going to unselect it. So it's trying to go in there and create an opening for your embroidery. But we don't need to, because we're going to stitch right on top of our fabric, correct? So what I want to do is go here and come down here and go to my remove overlaps and say never. Go to my item and go to remove overlaps down at the bottom and say never. And now it's not going to create a hole. And if this is going to be a stitched piece, maybe it's all going to be stitched. Maybe I want an outline that has a little bit of satin to it. And there's my satin. So I could have my heart right on top of there. That's how you would do that. Okay. Now, let's say I'm going to delete this part here because we don't need it. I wanted to turn this into like a patch, and I want to cut right on this line. So let me go back to slow redraw. First of all, let me go back and make sure I want to be on the during embroidery part because I want to trim. So what happens is, let's go to our slow redraw. It's going to do a placement line like that. And then I'm going to lay my fabric down. It's going to tack it down. And then when it color changes, I'm going to trim it. And then it's going to start this part here. So this is where you don't want that, you don't want to do your stitch yet because you don't have your fabric on the back side. Okay, so you have choices here. One of the choices is when it does the tack down and you lay your fabric on the top, you can flip your hoop over and lay the fabric to the bottom, and then it'll tack down both the front and the back, and then you can trim both the front and the back and then do your satin stitch. Okay, and you would have this on like Badge Master, so you could do it that way. If you think, the other way to do it is instead of using the Applique tab, what we're going to do is let's bring in our design again, and we will select it and well, we don't need to, we're going to delete that part for right now. What we could do is create this part with our applique if we wanted to, and just do the first part, like, whoops, let me see here. Where am I going? Here. If you chose something like pre-cut and glue, okay? Or if you wanted to do manual, let's just undo what I just did. When you're doing manual, you don't need a fill. What you do is you need your outline. So if I go back and bring the outline back and delete the fill, I can work with this outline. Okay, this is an SVG. So the first thing I need is a placement line. So that's placement. I can do a copy paste up here, and I'm going to go to the colors and change it to something we can really see. I'm going to do red, this red. This would be my tack down, and I'm going to go over here and open up so you can see the parts. Placement, tack down, and then I could do a second tack down to hold the back on if I needed that, and I could do that with by selecting this, and I could do convert auto border, and maybe I want to go to the outside just maybe 0.02 or 002. I never know which way to go here. Remove holes running. Okay. And let's go in close and see how far away that one is. Oh, it's not very far. Let me just make it blue. So it's right on the edge. So you probably want to go, let's delete that one. Let's try this again. You want to make your back one maybe a little bit wider than your front one. So you can do auto border. Let's try that 0.08. Measurement for me is always difficult. There. I don't want it that big, so I want it something smaller. But I would do that outline and do my auto border, and that would make it. And typically what I end up doing is I end up deleting that one and going back in here and trying to figure out what measurement I need. And I think I need, I don't know. Let's see what that one did. There we go. So this one is a little bit bigger than the front, which is fine. And then you could take your blue one or your first one and copy paste it again, change color. Let's change it to this lime color. And in properties, let's make that a satin. And we want it 3.0 because I like a 3.0. There we go. Whoops. Now that's because I'm in inches and I need to put in 3.0 mm. There we go. All right. So now I have my applique. All right. So not, these are all your steps, and I'm going to show you in my machine. I do have the applique I created so you can see the applique steps, how the machine reads the applique steps. So let me, does anybody have questions on applique? All right. So that pretty much covers, really doing an applique. Definitely you can add things on top of it. I have done videos where I've taken Janome designs and then I created appliques from the design. Like I resized, and I was just looking to see where it is now. I resized we have that Danish horse, and I resized him big enough to fit on a pillow, but I don't want to do all that stitching. So I made the horse part an applique and then just let the embroideries fall on top of that. So there's lots of, when you start making things big, that's why you use applique. When you start making things really large, you save on thread by doing an applique. So let me get my camera over to my machine and I'll show you what that looks like. I have to move a couple things and I'll put the camera on once I get set because I don't want to make everybody seasick here, because that could happen. All right, let's see here. There we go. All right, let me move to my camera. First, we're going to go to me. There we go. Oh, there we are. There's the camera. Okay. So let me touch here. And I'm going to just X out of there because I don't need it. I'm going to go get my applique. And it is, I think it's in here. There it is. Okay. All right. So see on the screen here, I'm going to get close. Right down here where it shows you the colors. So this first one, and I could put my viewer on so we could see, but it makes it, because this color is so light, it doesn't help. This is the placement line. So it's telling you a color number. So it would stitch that, and then you would lay your fabric over it. And then it says number 2, tack down. See how it read that? It says tack down. So I know I'm going to tack it down. And before it does this color, I'm going to trim it. Now it does read some of the commercial designs that you buy as well. You may see this kind of thing in those as well. So make sure you're looking for that. It does it in the CM17. I think it does it in the S9 and the 15,000. I don't know about the 550E and those. I haven't played with those in a long time, so I don't really know. Let me get my camera set here so we can look at hoops. And I'm going to check my comments to see if anybody, you guys are so quiet. No comments today. All right. Let's see here. There we go. All right. I think I covered everything on, what's going on here? Make sure. There we go. I think I've covered, oh, my camera's upside down. That's the problem. There we go. See my pretty wall? There we go. Back down here. There we go. All right. I was like, why is my arm in there like that? Okay. So I wanted to talk about hoops and hoop limits. So I'm going to start with just this little hoop first. Okay. Now, one thing I tell people when they're hooping is always have your hoop in the orientation that it goes on your machine. Now, on my CM17, it slides in on the left side. A 15,000 would, and a S9 would be over here on the right. So I would make sure I had my hoop the right way. That way, unless you're one of those people who can have things upside down and whatever and still get it in the right spot, I always have to have my hoop in the right direction. And then one of the things, if you look on the hoop itself, and I don't know if you can see it, it'll say L and R right here. So if you can read that. There you go, L and R. So you know that the inner hoop only goes in one way, and then you know your plastic grid, and this is for alignment. You can use this for alignment on putting things together. All right, so, and with our CM17, typically what I do is I get my stuff hooped and I'll close it halfway. I'll do my tightening. I'll make sure before I get too tight, if I have to pull my fabric, we always want to make it like snug enough, and you don't want to pull once you've gotten it tightened. So I get it where I want it, and then I can close it. And if I need to snug it one more time, I snug it with that. Okay. Now, when you're looking at this hoop, this dark line out here, that's as far as you can go. That's 5.5 inches this way and 7.9 this way. Even though, and this hoop doesn't have as much around it as some of the other hoops, but people think just because, oh, I have room there, I can get something out there. Even in your software, you could create something outside the bounds of the hoop. You can save it as a draw file, but if you tried to save it as a JEF file, the software will, it has an auto default in it, and it will say, something is outside of the hoop, does not fit in the hoop. And also, when in the software, when you have something outside the hoop, it turns pink in there. So this is the limit of what you're sewing. When you're looking on the edit screen of your machine, that is the limit right there. It's showing you the outer edge. So in your machine, you could bring something right up to the edge of your edit screen. Okay. They're not, you don't have to be one piece in. You still have from this line over as the safety. This is sort of like the safety area. Like, remember I was talking about that frame out? So if my shamrock was up here and it jumped here, if it was too close, it might have to jump and it would hit the hoop. So that's why in the software, it'll tell me my frame out distance. I need to change it. So I can make that shorter. There's a way to do that in the optimizer. So, you can get things right up to it and your foot can get around it wherever you are. And did you ever notice if you're too much to the left or too much to the right or near the top or the bottom, and you want to thread, you have to change thread, it'll say move hoop for threading. And if you say okay, all it does is move the hoop so that the foot is now more centered, so it won't run into anything around here and bang your threader into. And once you thread, just push the button and it'll say move hoop back, and it'll move hoop right back to where it was. So you can definitely use that if you're when you're threading. Now this is the hoop that probably has the most, and probably this isn't the most differences, maybe I should say that. The most differences in, trying to keep the paper underneath to be square with this. Okay, the most differences in what's here side to side, okay, and what's here on this part here. Let me get this flat. That's part of the problem. Okay, so this is our quilting hoop. All right, and this is the biggest one we have for quilting. People can use it. You can use other hoops as well, but this one is specifically made for quilting, and it has a couple of features to make quilting a quilt easier on your machine. One, it's the nice large magnets that go on the side. They're big enough. They're sort of like a clamp and a magnet all together, and they fit right over here and hold all those layers together. All right, and on the regular hoops, like this doesn't have any magnets, but on the regular hoop, it's only coming over this. And to get a quilt in here, you'd have to open up this quite a bit. I know there's workarounds, but I have to show you the Janome way first. And so when you're looking at this hoop, again, this is how much space you have, 10.8 from here to here, 10.8 from here to here. So that's all the space that you can use. And how you use this hoop is you lay your quilt over there, and you might have, if I'm lining something up, sometimes I have the template taped onto here. so I can slide my quilt back and forth. I don't have my quilt attached. It's just laying there. And if you check out my series, Easy Does It Quilting, I cover this there too. So you lay this down and push your quilt down. And that's when you can look at, say, the connection from the old block to the new one is right here. That's where you're going to move your quilt back and forth to get that connection in the right spot. And then you might have, you're going to move your grid with it so you have everything in the right spot. So that's how you would work with this one. Sometimes I try to make things simple so that my connector is always on this line when I'm doing edge to edge, so it makes it easy, but it's not always the way to go. Sometimes you have to, sometimes it starts up here, they all have to end in the same start and end in the same spot so they connect. So sometimes when I'm working, I try to make a design that ends here, but you might make one that comes down and up and down and up and down, and then it connects over here. Just as these two connectors have to be on the same plane. But all this extra space is there for your quilt. So when you push this down and you put your magnets in, your quilt takes up a little, there's a little bit of space here that your magnets are taking up. So you have less space here. And you want to give your quilt a place to lay in. If we had it so close, it would make the quilt, I don't think the quilt would lay as nicely in the hoop for you. So they gave you a bit of a generous spot. Now it does become difficult on a corner of a quilt because you should add some fabric over here so that it's caught in there. So if you want to leave your backing a little bit bigger, you don't have to really keep your batting and your quilt. You don't have to make your quilt or your batting bigger. I do make my batting about 4 inches bigger anyways around my quilt. I like that extra. But then the backing, you can do it 4 inches as well. But if you don't have enough backing, you can put like muslin or whatever on the edges. And I've had to do that too when I bought just enough of that. Okay. All right. So that is our hoop knowledge. This is the safety area. I know it's narrow over here and wider over here. I think this has to do with the threader and having to move the hoop. Over here, the threader is on this side, so your hoop would only move a little bit in to give you the space for that. So that's why that's there. And always, this is going to be the center of that block, whatever you're doing. And you can put this on your hoop in your machine with the grid and see if your needle's going to go in there, and then use the jog keys. But please remember to take this out before you stitch, or you'll have a broken needle, because it will move to the first spot over here. If you do one stitch stop, it'll move up there and make it stitch right on the grid. So make sure you take your grid out. When I teach in a class, I try not to have them move to the machine. That we don't do the set the center, because we're pretty much sure what we're doing. And we're usually doing one block, so it's okay. All right, I think that's everything I had for you today. Let me get back over here, and I'll put the camera on, and we'll see. Are there any questions? Oh, there's Nancy Fiedler. Hi, Nancy. Nice to see you. All right, you guys are all so quiet. Nancy was probably the person most inspirational in getting me to do things. She would tell me, I'd make a project, and she'd say, yeah, make it a little easier. Take a few things away. I'm learning, Nancy. It's taken me a while, but I'm learning. All right. I'm going to let everybody go. We're about 40 minutes in anyway, so it's time to go. I'll see you all next week. I will be back here on Thursday for my usual. And I think we're going to be talking about fill stitches in Artistic Digitizer, playing with your fill stitches. So that should be fun. I'm leaving over the weekend. I'm going out to Super Stitch for their, they have a 2-day event. You can check they're out in Erie, PA, or Northeast PA, really. Super Stitch, they're having an event on Monday and Tuesday. And then they have a Wednesday, I'm doing a trunk show, Artistic Digitizer demo. So that's going to be 2 of those on Wednesday. Okay, that's where I'll be. I'm also going to be, where else am I going to be? Let's see, this is March. In April, I'm going to be at, I think it's called Country Fabrics. I'm doing, it's in Shiloh, Ohio. I'm doing a creativity and HD event. It's for those people who would like to come out and see how a CM17 works. We do a 2-day project. You end up with this nice, either you can make a runner, you can take your 4 blocks and make pillows, whatever you want to do out of it. But we have different techniques and things that we teach you on that. And then in May, I'm going to be out in Alto at in New Mexico at a quilting situation doing a CM17 retreat. So you can always check with them. At the end of the month in May, let's see, where am I at the end of the month in May? I'm going to be in Quilter Studio in Virginia. And then I'm somewhere in June, but I'm not sure. All right. I'm going to let everybody go. You guys have a great day. It's almost like the weekend for me. So I will see you all next week. Thank you, everyone, for joining me.